My name is Elton, and this is a mini-series on my channel where I'll be taking a look at artifact sets that have similar effects and uses, specifically for characters who can utilize them well, but have to go through some sort of constant debate of which one to choose. I hope to shed some light on how these sets differ and whether the trade-offs that each of them have are actually worth it, as well as how units can actually proc these effects properly. However, like always, I have to give a disclaimer. I'm not here to calculate percentages or crunch the numbers on any character's damage output. I am only here to explain how these artifacts work, how well they work in the current state of the game, and how well these effects can be taken advantage of. I am not here to shame, humiliate, or insult anyone who chooses one set over another for their builds. I also want to say that I do compile my information from the most up-to-date guides from the Keqing Main's website, as they have a plethora of very helpful information, so if you're wondering where I got all this knowledge, I got it from there. Now, with all that said and done, welcome to Artifact Antagony. So today I'll be talking about the brand new healing set to join the roster. Song of Days Past is one of the two new artifact sets released in 4.3. And while I'll make a video about the other set in the next episode, this artifact set is extremely interesting, as we have yet seen another new side to healing in the game. In the third episode of this series, I talked about the previous healing sets, Maiden Beloved and Hued Clam. And to recap, Hued was pretty much the clear winner, as it was a set that could push healers to provide a bit of offense, while Maiden Beloved provided more healing to be given from healer characters when it really wasn't needed. That was because dedicated healers on their own could provide enough healing to keep their teammates alive. Alive enough is still alive, so there wasn't ever really a point to overdo it. Not to mention that the situation seemed like a bit of a filtration system. If healers couldn't fit Hued Clam's damage mechanic, then they could be placed on Maiden. But there were other sets that those healers could use, such as Noblesse, Deepwood, and Tenacity to name a few. And these alternative sets provided a much better utility to their teams, though Maiden ended up getting completely sidelined. But now with this new set out, it's time to finally take a look at how it fares against our reigning victor, Hued. To refresh, Hued Clam gives a 15% healing bonus to the wielder, however its 4-piece effect is a long blurb of words, so I'm just going to summarize it. Essentially, when the equipped character heals in any way, a little bubble will appear next to the wielder for 3 seconds. This bubble will gather all the healing in those 3 seconds with a max of 30k HP, and then release in an AoE explosion around the active character that deals physical damage. Only one of these bubbles can be reduced every 3.5 seconds, and while the damage that the bubble does cannot be boosted by physical damage bonus, character level, or elemental mastery, its damage can be bolstered by Superconduct, which is a reaction that can reduce physical resistance on enemies. And finally, this 4-piece effect can be triggered even when the character is not even on field. As for Song of Days Past, it also gives a 15% healing bonus with its 2-piece effect. And as for its 4-piece, when the equipped character heals any party member, they will enter a 6-second state that gathers up all of that healing, including overhealing. The state has a cap of 15k healing, and only one of these states can exist at one time, while the recording healing can come from multiple party members. After the 6 seconds has occurred, this state will change, allowing your active character's normal, charged, plunging attacks, elemental skill, and elemental burst damage to be increased by 8% of the total healing recorded from the 6-second state. This damage increase state ends after 5 buffed hits of any kind hit opponents from the active character, or after 10 seconds have passed. Okay. So a few things to note about this new set are that it provides a damage bonus, which can be multiplied by things like crit damage, elemental damage bonus, and multiplicative reactions. However, despite this potential of increasing damage even further, this buff only lasts for a short duration due to the fact that buffed characters will almost always be more likely to reach the 5-hit quota instead of having the 10 seconds passed. And speaking of buffed characters, this only works on the active character. Song of Days Past seems to work well in theory when it comes to utility. Seems to prioritize using healers that can heal a lot in one quick motion, so that they can max out the 15k, and then you can just swap to your main DPS to deal a lot of damage. But the window of dealing damage is constricted by 2 things, the healing quota only being 5 and the increase being a small percentage of 15,000. 8% of 15,000 is 1,200, before crit, damage bonuses, and reactions. This actually seems like quite a lot due to the fact that after those damage multipliers have been added in, it could actually increase damage by a significant amount. However, it's due to the fact that the 5-hit quota limits how effective this can be, especially when a lot of main DPSs have their strongest hits be their last one. And as for Hued, I've already explained how this set works in the previous episode where I set it up against Maiden Beloved. Ocean Hued is generally almost always preferred over Maiden Beloved, so that's why I didn't include that set in the video, and if you want a more in-depth discussion on that, please check out the previous episode I talked about. I'll link that down below. But regarding this episode's character analysis, I'll have to shorten one part while going extremely in-depth on another. I'm first going to isolate a subsection of healers that I want to focus on specifically. This is because in order for Song of Days Past effect to work, the equipped healer needs to be able to clear the 15,000 mark within 6 seconds. This means that the healers who heal in intervals over extended periods of time cannot capitalize on this effect, making it pointless to put them on it. So healers in question that I will not be talking about are Bennett, Diona, Dory, Kuki, Noelle, and Sayu. This is because Bennett, Diona, Dory, and Sayu all have the same mechanic of healing in intervals with their bursts, with Sayu not even overhealing in her base kit at C0, while Bennett doesn't even overheal at all, so maxing out the 15,000 in the 6-second window doesn't even work. Kuki's skill heals in little bits at a time, so she definitely can't use this set properly, and Noelle needs to hit opponents with their normal and charge attacks in order to heal, which only has a chance of triggering healing, and also means that she would just be buffing herself on field. To be really frank and put the nail into the coffin, Sayu is best on Viridescent, Bennett is best on Noblesse, Kuki is either better on Flower of Paradise Lost or Gilded Dreams, and Noelle is just better on Husk of Opulent Dreams herself in order to deal immense geo damage. And while there are some healers left over that are similar to the ones above that shouldn't use this set, they have different complexities that actually make them somewhat viable, so let's actually start analyzing this very interesting situation. Now, as I get into the characters, I'll be discussing them in separate groups. This is because the characters have similar mechanics and abilities. The first group is Baizhu and Yao Yao. These two are both Dendro healers who have the ability to heal a great amount. Baiju's skill and Yao Yao's burst are able to heal everyone by a massive amount in a small window, making it seem like it would work well with them both. It also depends on teammates as well. For example, if the main DPS of your Aggravator Spurred team is someone like Tignari, Alhaitham, Yaimiko, Keqing, Sino, etc., it would just make it a bit more sense for Baizhu and Yao to be on Song of Days Past. This is because its effect can actually buff their damage. But in Bloom, Burgeon, and Hyper Bloom based teams, with Kuki, Tomo, or Nilou, this damage buff has absolutely no effect, therefore rendering the set's effect completely useless. Besides, Song of Days Past doesn't win over Deepwood in terms of support. Almost all Dendro units should be on Deepwood due to the 4-piece effect of reducing Dendro resistance by 30% for 8 seconds. This resistance shredding is way more valuable than the damage increase that Song of Days Past can provide. Then again, Ocean Hued Clam doesn't come close either for these two. Barbara, Jean, and Charlotte make up the next group of healers. These healers are probably the most viable to use this set. This is because these healers can do massive healing with their burst on cast, not to mention that it can heal everyone, meaning that it can completely fill up the 15,000 quota within the 6-second window very easily. However, there are certain things to consider. Like Sayu, Jean is an animal unit, so resistance shredding from Viridescent is unbelievably valuable. She wouldn't want to give up that for this. Barbara is an interesting case, as she has comfortably found her bearings with Ocean Hued Clam. This has allowed her to become somewhat of a sort of shabbier version of Kokomi and being a possible Hydra driver for some teams. This means that she can take full advantage of Ocean Hued. But Barbara's burst can massively heal all party members, and not to mention, if you have her C6 unlocked, she can fully revive someone if they've fallen in battle full health every 15 minutes. And to be completely fair, she isn't used as a healing driver due to her skill applying Hydro to the active character really frequently, so honestly I feel that you could just choose what kind of Barbara you want to build her. It is important to remember though that Barbara can be used as an alternative healer in Bloom, specifically ones with Nilou. This again would mean that Song of Days Past would have absolutely no effect on increasing Dendro Core's damage. However, in freeze teams, I would say that it's pretty suitable, especially for Ganyu and Rithsley. This is because Ganyu's charge attacks have 2 hits, meaning that 2.5 level 2 shots would benefit from the damage buff. This actually isn't too bad, as in freeze teams with Ganyu, she isn't meant to stay out on field that long due to a numerous amount of these attacks. She ends up probably doing 3 to 5 charge level 2 shots per rotation. And while a lot of main DPSs have their strongest hit being their last one, Ganyu's charge shot actually has the same damage multiplier, so buffing a weaker attack instead of a stronger one won't actually be an issue at all. Same goes for Rithsley. His burst is coincidentally, or maybe not so coincidentally, a 5-hit attack with all the same damage multiplier. This means that after either Barbara or Charlotte heals, he can quickly deal consistent increased burst damage. And as for Charlotte, the same can be said for her. Her burst heals everyone super fast, and while she can actually be placed on Tenacity of the Millilith for attack buffing, her cooldown is longer than her skill duration, making it extremely inconsistent. However, I think she is the one healer that the set was genuinely made for. I actually believe that she and Ritzy are supposed to go together in a team in order to help battery, heal, and buff him. This actually makes sense given his skill gives him a normal attack increase, and he loses health when he performs those attacks, and only his charge attack can heal him up a bit, which means that Charlotte is probably the one doing the heavy lifting in the end. So the next set of healers, these are healers who can heal, but only do so in large amounts when they are on field and have to be the ones attacking. The first healer I'll be discussing is a combination of an on-cast healer while also having the on-hit healing mechanic. Mika does a burst of healing on cast, and then when the active character lands a hit during his burst state, they heal themselves, with an on-hit healing interval of 2.5 seconds. Realistically, Mika's only ever going to be paired with Eula, Razor, or Freminet in a physical-based team, so let's only discuss those. Starting with Eula, she is the person he was made for, and her strongest hit is the last part of her burst duration. Mika achieving the 15,000 healing isn't actually the issue. It's the fact that the damage buff will never reach the explosion of her Lightfall sword. This is because the rotation is Mika's burst and then skill. Eula goes into her burst animation, which takes about 2 seconds, and then her window to build stacks is 7 seconds, making it a whopping 9 seconds at the very least. Only 5 of Eula's attacks in her attack sequence of building stacks will receive the buff. This is because the damage buff duration will start during the middle of her attack, and at least 5 attacks will happen before her final attack explodes. Razor is the next contender for this, and luckily his normal attacks are all around the same damage multiplier, resulting in not much of an inaccurate buffing situation. However, during Razor's burst, his Wolf Guardian stand thingy does coordinated electro attacks. These attacks don't do nearly as much damage to his opponents with a physical Razor build, and these hits are going to steal the quotas of the damage buff away from his stronger physical attacks. Mind you, this is also hilariously inverted if you decide to build Razor and Thundering Fury. His coordinated electro attacks and skill hits will be much stronger, but his physical hits to trigger his Wolf stand would steal the damage buff away as well. So this is just a lose-lose with Razor. And finally we have Freminet. Freminet's skill at level 4 deals the strongest hit of physical damage, and the way you get there is by performing 4 normal attacks. This initially makes sense, dealing 4 hits of your normal attacks and then letting the 5th and final hit be the one that can still benefit from the damage buff. However, when it comes to how his skill works, it ends up dealing a coordinated attack, so just like Razor, these attacks steal away from the damage buff. This is even the same during Freminet's burst duration, where every normal attack under a skill state gives 2 stacks instead of 1. This makes it easier to get the strongest attack out with less hits, but it ultimately only works for one of those hits. Mika's honestly just better off with Ocean Hued. He can definitely max out the bubble, and he can actually make it deal more base damage. This is because the bubble damage, while it cannot be increased by damage bonuses or even crit, can deal more damage when Superconduct is in effect, and Superconduct is a reaction that is only ever really used in physical teams, just like the ones that Mika is placed in. This would allow him to deal out more damage along with the main DPSs, so Ocean Hued on Mika is definitely the better option. Chi-Chi also ends up being in the exact same situation, but honestly better. Her healing is phenomenal. I mean, it's the only thing that she can ever really excel at. And before the introduction of Ocean Hued, Chi-Chi's utility was pretty much non-existent. I mean, who even needs that much healing? But she actually became a better driver for Ocean Hued than Miss Sangonomiya herself. This again was due to the fact that she was cryo and already being half a superconduct was able to increase the amount of bubble damage through the physical resistance shredding of enemies. And since Ocean Hued Clam directly correlates to the amount of healing accumulated, who better to slap this artifact set on than the character who does nothing but heal herself? And for the last two of the group, we have the OG Ocean Hued Clam user herself, Kokomi. Her utility mainly results in her being used as a consistent on-field and off-field Hydra applicator that can heal while also having the option to be played as a driver/secondary DPS for half of the time. This is because during her burst, she's able to heal a massive amount with her normal and charge attacks. This allows her Ocean Hued Clam to have a consistent damage for a good portion of the rotation. Now keep in mind, Kokomi is used in a large array of teams, from Freeze to Taser to Bloom to any team that just wants a good healer in general. And since some of these teams can't really capitalize on the damage buff from Song of Days Past, specifically the Bloom-related ones, it makes it exceedingly difficult for a very specific build on her to be that valuable. And not only that, the other teams that can make use of it can't even use it all that well, depending on the main DPS. This is pretty much the same situation with Charlotte and Freeze teams, except for the fact that Kokomi can actually be put on Tenacity while having perfect uptime of it, so honestly Song of Days Past isn't great for her either. And finally we get to our last healer, Farina. Now, I know that she isn't supposed to be on her healing side most of the time, but I still have to discuss this. In fact, it's the exact reason that since she should be on her sub-DPS version of herself instead of her healing one is what makes this point of contention. I fully believe that this new healing set was made to work in tandem with Furina. Furina's burst has an ability to provide up to a 75% damage bonus to everyone in the team upon activation. And the way to achieve that is to change the percentage of any or all party members' health by 300%, and by that way, accumulating 300 fanfare points. And we also know that Salon members from Furina's skill decrease every party member's HP every time they attack an opponent. And so the strategy is to let Furina's skill drain everyone's HP, and then activating her burst triggering the window to gain fanfare. Then use a healer to quickly change everyone's HP from that 300% needed by healing everyone back to full. Doing so would not only achieve Furina's max 75% damage bonus and Song of Days Past damage bonus as well. But anyways, we all know that Furina's skill damage is a shiny part of her kit, and Golden Troop is her best artifact set. I think it's pretty clear that Oceanhued Clam is still the winner. Song of Days Past is a good set in theory, but has two major issues that keep it from overthrowing Oceanhued, or at the very least leveling out with it. The first is that the damage buffing only counts for 5 hits. This isn't even close enough of a quota generous enough for it to be much of an advantage for almost all main DPSs. Since the hit quota is 5, this presents a lot of issues for DPSs who have their strongest hits being the last one in their attack sequence. This means that even if the buff is successful in triggering, the strongest hit or strongest hits of their attacks won't end up getting buffed. This is extremely detrimental to this artifact set actually being useful. And the second issue is that there aren't that many healers who can properly and want to use this set. Like I did in the breakdown at the beginning, a portion of healers straight up just can't proc this effect properly, and most of the rest can do better or serve better purposes with other artifact sets. Song of Days Past needs to not only have more healers whose best set would be this one, but also more main DPSs that require less hits to deal their main source of damage. Although I will say now, as I'm thinking about it, if there was more of a hit quota, this could potentially become a self-buffing set for main DPSs, who could heal themselves, and I guess they didn't want to go into that without stepping into Marchese Hunter territory. But yeah, this was Artifact Antagony, and this episode had quite a deep look into the potential of this set. You already know about Undepressed if you want to see more on a regular basis, and if you have something to say, I can only hope that's nice. Thank you, bye!